This evening, I'd like to first welcome to the stage Life Scout from Troop 982 in Leesburg, Micah Woolham, to join us or lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening. Good evening. Please stand as you're able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may take your seats. I'll now introduce Congressman Subramanyam to the mic.
Thank you. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I know we'll have a couple people still trickling in. Thank you for everyone who's joining online as well. There's a lot to talk about. Last week, I pulled a couple all-nighters, and I know the last couple months, really, we've been working a lot on some stuff that I didn't really like. It was this thing called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. I call it the Big Ugly Bill, whatever name you have for it. The reality is I thought it was important to have this discussion to talk about how it's going to impact our community and what's next, and as well as what's in the bill, because the bill is about 1,000 pages. And I actually read part of the bill out loud with my colleagues, because the previous iteration of the bill, some of the folks who voted for it said that they didn't know certain provisions in the bill. So we felt like we should read it for them. And, if you read the bill, it'll say, strike provision in subsection G5, and it refers to other bills. And so it's really complicated. And so we thought it would also be good to have a panel of experts today. They're going to introduce themselves to also answer any questions you have. They'll get the hard questions and I'll get the easy ones. But most importantly, I want to hear your stories. I want to hear why you're, happy with the bill or upset with the bill. And we don't just have to talk about the bill either. If you want to talk about other things, we can as well. But this is, I think, our 8th kind of public town hall. We've done one in every county in our region. And this is, I think, we've done many smaller town halls as well. But I think it's important to hear you, and most importantly, many of your stories have led to change. Even just our first couple of town halls, stories that people told at those town halls turned into big issues that led to this administration sort of changing course on things. And so just know you do have a voice in this whole process. But I want to talk about the bill. This was the largest wealth transfer from poor to rich in American history. It's the largest cut to health benefits in American history. It's the largest cut to food assistance in American history. And it's pretty amazing. The Medicaid provisions, along with the ACA provisions alone, will mean up to 17 million people will likely lose their access to care, or else it will be severely diminished. And that's hundreds of thousands of people in our state, and including tens of thousands of people right here in our community. And so, the way they're doing this is sneaky. You may have heard the defense of this bill is we just want able-bodied people to work. But the way they're doing this is modeled after what happened in Arkansas and Georgia, which is they essentially said, you have to basically keep proving over and over again that you're able-bodied, that you're working, that you're eligible. Well, the people who are eligible, but who are also the people who have the hardest time renewing their eligibility. They had PDFs you had to print out and sign and mail in, for instance, that are very difficult. Sometimes things would get lost in the mail. Sometimes people would try to work and they couldn't get a job, and then they couldn't figure out how to prove that when they got that job, they had trouble proving that they were working, for instance. Employers weren't sending them the letters on time. And that's the sort of thing that leads to people getting kicked off of Medicaid. There are no illegal immigrants on Medicaid. Don't let anyone tell you that illegal immigrants are the ones that are being kicked off Medicaid. It's American citizens who are enrolled in Medicaid and who are eligible that are going to be hurt the most. If you're someone on Medicaid, or if you know someone on Medicaid and you're wondering if you'll be impacted, everyone will be impacted pretty much, because you'll have to keep proving that you're worthy of being on Medicaid over and over again in this cumbersome process. And then there's SNAP and the food assistance that's being cut. That's for up to 5 million Americans, including millions of children, about 300,000 children in our state alone. So we put them all on these fancy posters here, but the long story short is a lot of kids are going to go hungry because of this bill. And then you talk about the clean energy provisions that were cut. We're going to see an 8% increase in most people's utility bills as a result. And we're going to see tens of thousands of clean energy jobs in Virginia cut as a result of this. I'm checking my notes because there's so many bad stuff in this bill that I have to keep checking. But people who care about the national debt, up to $6 trillion added to the national debt. And what was puzzling to me was now ICE is the 16th largest military in the world because of this bill. And they have more budget now than agencies like the FBI and agencies and law enforcement all around the country. And what this bill doesn't do, though, is fund immigration judges and process people, because it seems like they don't want to do due process anymore when it comes to immigration. And so that's a real problem. We should be funding real law enforcement. We should be funding immigration judges. We should be funding processing of applications, and not ICE and mass men going around kidnapping people with no due process. And so that's another part of this bill. And then locally here in Virginia, there's a couple real zingers in this bill that you may not have heard of. One that we're trying to get more attention about is the space shuttle at the Dulles Air and Space Museum is now being shipped to Houston, and because the Texas senators wanted to put that in the bill. And it's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars to do that. And I am actually was born and raised where they're sending it to Houston, Clear Lake, Texas. They already have a space shuttle, a full replica of the space shuttle, and 6 other aerial vehicles in that space center alone. They don't need another space shuttle. And our Smithsonian here is free. And so people all around the world come out to our region just to see the space shuttle and other things at that Air and Space Museum. And then there's another provision. Basically, our airports renegotiated their lease with the federal government at an affordable rate so that we could keep the tolls reasonable and hopefully lower them on the Dulles toll road, and so that we could actually expand the airports and pay for construction. But instead, they're scratching that lease, and they're making the airport renew their lease even more frequently, which means that the tolls on the Dulles toll road will continue to be high, as well as the flights going out of DCA and Dulles will be higher now because of that provision in the bill. Again, got slipped in the Senate. We have no idea why. No one's given me an explanation. But I could go on about very specific provisions that specifically hurt us here in Virginia. And there's a lot of things that were in the bill that got taken out. Several of my amendments the first time around related to federal employee retiree benefits actually got included in the bill. We were able to work with some Republican colleagues to actually get some bad stuff out. But in the end, there's a few claps. Yeah, good news. But, one other thing actually is there's $100 million slush fund for OMB to implement DOGE, basically. We have no idea why and how they're going to use that money, except that they're just going to get the slush fund to go around and continue to fire people. We have firings now happening at the State Department. About 2,000 more people will get fired. If you're one of them, I'd love for you to talk about your experience tonight. But the attack on the federal workforce in our region continues. They're also going to try to continue to move agencies completely out of the region to red states. And so that's going to be a real issue for our economy here. But we're going to continue to fight all that. I have a bill to prevent all of that, and we're trying to get some bipartisan support. And even the good stuff is kind of bad. And so there's this one provision that I kind of like. If you have a kid over the next 4 years, they'll just give you $1,000, which sounds kind of nice. But then they put it in what's called a Trump account. And so you have to start a Trump account. Originally, it was called a MAGA account, and now they're renaming it a Trump account. And that was an amendment to the bill, actually. And so even the good stuff doesn't feel great. You may have heard this great provision on no tax on tips. And it sounds like a great idea, but then there's a cap, $25,000. And then a lot of people, get cash tips, right? And so you don't actually benefit that much from the provisions in this bill. But why is there a cap at $25,000 when the cap on trust funds is $15 million still? I don't understand it. And the cap on multinational corporations, there is no cap on their tax breaks, right? And why are those provisions sunsetting within 3 years? It seemed like there's about a couple $1 billion out of the $5 trillion they're spending they're talking about 90% of the time in defense of this bill, that are simply very small drops in the bucket, sort of crumbs that they're throwing out, but are not real because of the way that they're written, how they're capped, and how they're sunsetting. And so, I could keep going, but I want to hear from you. People have asked me, what can I do about it? I look forward to supporting and introducing a One Big Beautiful Repeal Act. And what I want to do. And I'm excited to work with my Republican colleagues who said they hate certain parts of this bill. Great, let's get them out of there. I'm excited to work with the Freedom Caucus to see if they can actually be fiscally responsible for once and try to lower our debt for once instead of raise it by $5 trillion. I'm excited to work with anyone who will work with me to repeal this terrible bill. And I heard one person say that, well, some of the bad stuff's going to be implemented in 2 years, so maybe we can get rid of it by then. Or another senator said, oh, well, maybe the House will fix it, even though they didn't do anything to the bill, right? And so we heard a lot about how Republicans had heartburn about this bill. But in the end, this doesn't need to be partisan. If everyone dislikes this bill, then let's all work together to repeal it or fix it or whatever you want to do. So I'm going to also end by saying that your voice really does matter. I promise you. Yes, I'm a member of Congress, but my job is not only to speak out, but also to give you a microphone, literally today, to speak out as well. And so that's why we're here. But I want to hand it over very briefly to our panel of experts who are, again, they're going to take the hard questions and I take the easy ones. And we're going to also hear from you afterwards. But thank you so much for being here. I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today. And thank you all for being here. My name is Evan Chapman. I am a policy professional with an organization called Clean Tomorrow. And we're working towards making sure that the United States is able to develop the technologies necessary to reduce emissions and deploy those technologies here in the United States. As the Congressman mentioned, the Big Beautiful Bill will repeal some of the incentives that were put in place through the Inflation Reduction Act to make sure that we're able to do so. So just a couple highlights, and happy to answer questions and talk through some of the specifics. But with passage of the recent legislation, U.S. household and business energy expenditures are expected to increase by $28 billion annually in 2030 and by over $50 billion in 2035. U.S. household energy costs by $165 per household per year in 2030, $280 per household per year in 2035. That's 7.5 increase in 2030 and over 13% in 2035. Reduce investment in U.S. electricity and clean fuels, reduce installation of solar capacity by 29 gigawatts and wind capacity by 43 gigawatts between 2025 and 2030. That sounds like kind of a fake number. It's a lot of energy. And will decrease clean electricity generation in 2035 by more than 820 terawatt hours, and that is an immense amount of energy. It'll also increase U.S. Greenhouse gas emissions by 190 million metric tons in 2030, 470 million metric tons in 2030, and that's about 2% of the 2005 emissions in 2030, 7% in 2035. So what that's going to do is it's going to make it more difficult for us to meet our climate goals, more difficult to retire some of the dirtiest emitting plants that we have. and more difficult to deploy American-made energy technologies here in the United States. So happy to answer some questions, looking forward to it. And thanks again for being here, and thanks again for having me.
Thanks. I'll echo my thanks for the opportunity to be here, and for you that you all are here. I think is fantastic. This is what democracy is supposed to look like, so it's a privilege to be part of it. My name is Matt Gardner. I'm a senior fellow at the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. We're a DC-based think tank that analyzes federal, state, and local tax system through the lens of fairness and sustainability, which means what we're asking about a bill like this is, if you look at the amount of spending that your constituents want, that lawmakers want, is the tax system as currently configured sufficient to pay for those services now and over the long haul? And the long haul is the critical part here. Pretty clearly the answer to both of those questions is no. From a fairness perspective, we want to ask, do we have a tax system or a tax change that is taxing low-income people further into poverty, that is fairly taxing the best off individuals and the most profitable corporations? Again, the answer appears to be no. A couple of quick data points that I think are important. We do data. That's what my organization is known for. So I'll give you a few incredibly interesting ones. The first is 4.5 trillion. This is the estimated 10-year cost of the tax cuts in the bill that was just passed. Maybe a quarter of that is allegedly being offset with spending cuts, which means that something like 75% of it is going right on the national credit card, boosting the national debt, which is problematic, not just for those of us paying taxes now, but for those of us who have kids who will do so in the future. Where's it going? Where's the 4.5 trillion going? Three buckets are worth mentioning. 75% of this is one thing: cleaning up the mess that the Trump administration left us all by having a tax cut in 2017 that was set to expire at the end of 2025, forcing an incredibly difficult decision on policymakers 8 years later. Here we are, and 75% of what we just spent on tax cuts is going to fix this one problem. The next big bucket, probably 20% of it, is new tax cuts for businesses, corporations, and pass-throughs. That leaves a grand total of about 3% of this 4.5 trillion that is going for the stuff you've been hearing about for the last year. The tips, the overtime, the vehicle deduction. That's it. So, as the representative mentioned a moment ago, while virtually all of the sound and fury we've been hearing about is these provisions that are going to help middle-income people, they are a vanishingly small part of the overall cost. And what this means, I'll give you three more numbers. Representative taxpayers in Virginia, this is what we do, is to figure out how people in different income levels in different states are affected by these provisions. The average tax change for a Virginian in the bottom 20% of the income distribution, this is a group with average income around $17,000 in 26, we think, is zero. Some getting small tax cuts, some getting tax hikes, but on balance, zero. For middle income Virginians, folks with average incomes in 26, we believe, of $82,000, I'm sorry, the average tax cut is going to be about $1,700 in 26. Some more, some less, depending on whether you have kids or not. The top 1% of Virginians, a group that has on average $2.5 million of income in 26, is going to see an average tax cut of $78,000. If that sounds bad, it's going to get worse because, as the representative mentioned a moment ago, all of the things that are geared towards low-income families in this bill are going to go away at the end of 2028, at roughly the same time that President Trump himself rides off into the sunset. So it's distributionally bad and is going to get worse. So happy to talk about the hundreds of pages of specific provisions in the Q&A, but I'll just leave it there.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. My name's April Octor, and I am with Encompass Community Supports. We are a nonprofit, and we are funded by federal, state, and local governments. We operate as both the CSB, the Community Services Board, and the AAA, so the Area Agency on Aging. We represent 5 counties in rural Virginia: Fauquier, Culpeper, Madison, Orange, and Rappahannock. And in a nutshell, our mission is we want to help people live happier, healthier lives in their community. Last week, Congress passed the largest federal healthcare cuts in history. And this represents a significant change to our healthcare system. I'm new to Encompass. I come from a 20-year career as a public health epidemiologist. And public health is what we do as a society to create the opportunity for everyone to be healthy. It's the science and the art of promoting health and preventing disease. And this bill does the exact opposite. The full impact we will not know until time goes by. But we know that agencies like mine are squarely in the sights of this bill. We provide some of the most vital safety net services in our communities. Just to give you a couple of examples, community services boards, we are the single point of entry for publicly funded mental health, intellectual and developmental disabilities, and substance use disorder services. The AAAs, the Area Agencies on Aging, we provide services and supports so our seniors can live in their homes and age with dignity and safety. So what we're facing are potential cuts to these services. And I can't say strongly enough that the need does not go away if the funding does. So thank you again for having me. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Thank you so much. Okay, so people can go ahead and start lining up if you have questions. And while we have people lining up, one of the things that I want to briefly touch on is some of the implementation dates of this. I've had a lot of questions about, okay, I'm on Medicaid. When is this going to affect me? So on the Medicaid stuff, it's going to kick in December 2026, right? So the beginning of 2027, I believe, is when it'll start being implemented. Is that right? The work requirements, the work and documentation requirements. That's 2026. So that's next year. It's going to start to kick in. So yeah, a lot of this is coming. There's no implementation date on the SNAP cuts either. We don't know when those will kick in. We assume next year, but I guess in the 1,000-page bill, they forgot to put that in there, which seems like a pretty big error. But and then any other implementation dates that we should know about when it comes to Medicaid?
So I don't know the dates off the top of my head. I know that they are phased in and that the things that are happening related to documentation where a client will have to prove that they work or prove that they qualify by income will move to every 6 months rather than every calendar year. And then the work requirements will be phased in as well. I think what's important for us to know as a community is something that we can do is join together and help our residents meet these criteria. This is a population that moves frequently, and anything we can do to put structure in place to help them either print it out, mail it in, meet the requirements, that more than anything will help keep people on their rolls and receiving the services they need.
Thank you so much. And just one last thing, that I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but when they did this in Arkansas and Georgia, it had work requirements on Medicaid. It didn't lead to more people working. It actually just kicked people who were eligible off of Medicaid. Like 18,000, I think, got kicked off their Medicaid program after the work requirements kicked in. And not a lot of people started working. The other thing bothers me is their definition of work too, because apparently they don't think that raising a teenager, for instance, is work anymore. I can tell you that it's work. And they also, we already have work requirements in Medicaid. And they say they were they're trying to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid, but this actually creates more waste and more abuse and more paperwork, most importantly. It makes the program run with less efficiency, with the whole purpose of kicking people off of Medicaid. And so it's all backwards, but the whole purpose is to be able to pay for those tax cuts to those big corporations. So that's the priorities in this bill. But I want to hear from you. Maybe you guys like the bill. I don't know. So let's hear from you guys. And we'll start with our first comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Congressman, for the opportunity. My mic isn't working. No? Okay. So thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. My name is Linda Ace. I'm a resident of Leesburg, Virginia. I am one of those federal employees that the Trumpty Dumpty administration removed because I was doing good work. I was in the DEI framework, providing reasonable accommodation for people with disability at the Department of Interior, the Office of Surface Mining. I have over 20 years of experience doing that. I learned on February 27th from my supervisor that I would get a call on the 28th of February and be removed. I met with HR and I was told that I was doing illegal work. Illegal? Really? Okay. I'm an EEO specialist protected under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, providing reasonable accommodation for employees with disabilities, and they considered it illegal. So I asked the HR person who at Interior asked for my removal, and he wouldn't tell me. Well, I kept pushing him in the corner. You could see he was very uncomfortable, and finally told me that it was OPM. That's not really the reason that I'm here today. That ugly bill, it's not beautiful. There's nothing beautiful about it. There's nothing beautiful about hatred. There's nothing beautiful about taking services away from vulnerable population. I have a daughter. She's 37 years old. She's very outspoken and she's beautiful. And my daughter has Down syndrome. And she is her own self-advocate. She said she wants the opportunity to talk to Trump and put her finger in his face and tell him what she thinks. And I should have brought her with me tonight. She lives in a group home and she's thriving. And she lives with people like her, other adults with disability. It's an awesome home. They provide her loving care. There's no hatred there, just love. And she can live in her community through Medicaid. She has a Medicaid waiver. Without that Medicaid waiver, the only option for her when I pass would be for her either to live with her sister or to be in an institution. Now, I don't understand how the United States of America could go back to 1950 or 1970 and put people with disability in institutions. That's not what I want for my daughter. I love my daughter, and she's beautiful, and she's smart, and she's thriving, and she's living independently. And that's what I want for her. So thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you. Thank you for your story.
Terry Simons from Leesburg, Virginia. I don't have a story, unfortunately, but I know that we've heard a lot about the budget bill and how it affects Medicaid. What we haven't heard a lot about is that given that the budget bill increases the deficit by a lot, when does sequestration for Medicare kick in? And what is going to be the effects for people who are on Medicare?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, you want to take that?
I can try, and just for disclaimer, I'm not a health policy expert by any stretch, but there is a line, it came, I think, from 2010 that says if the federal deficit increases by X amount, it triggers an automatic 4% cut to Medicare. I do not know the details on the date, so I don't know, for example, when that would go into place, nor do I know how they would apply that 4% cut.
Yeah, I had heard in the next 10 years, like early 2030s, it was somewhat someone opined to me once, but it's hard to tell, especially if we keep adding to the debt. Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, what's difficult about this bill is you're taking away people's access to healthcare benefits. And if you're spending, money on increasing the debt, you would hope that we do it on things that will bring revenue back. But we know that a lot of the tax cuts from 2017 that got made permanent didn't actually pay down the debt that it created. And what we're doing is we're cutting people's benefits, seniors, veterans, kids, their access to food assistance in order to pay for these giant tax cuts that I've talked to a few corporate C-suite people said they didn't even want, they didn't even ask for them. And so, yeah, it's really difficult, but yeah, that's a good question. And it's something we need to keep watching. Social Security and the solvency of Social Security is another issue too. And then of course, the continued attacks on Medicaid will be really harmful. And this is essentially what they're creating in Medicaid is a paperwork test. So if you fill out the paperwork right, and who do you think is gonna, most of the fraud in Medicaid is actually on the provider side, right? And so our expert says yes, but you know, who's gonna be better at paperwork? The person who needs Medicaid most, or the person who's committing fraud and getting Medicaid benefits they don't deserve? It's probably gonna be the latter, right? And so they've created these incentives to basically either defraud the system or really get people off of Medicaid to pay for those other cuts. So thank you for your question. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That work? Okay, thanks. Hi, my name is Jenna Emhoff. I'm from Middleburg, Virginia. This is my third town hall, 2 in person and 1 on the phone. So thank you all for taking the time this evening to be here too. That's important for us to have access to those questions, you know, or being able to have our questions answered. I have a number of questions because I've been rolling them forward from town hall to town hall.
I'll do my best.
So in the town hall in March over in Fauquier County, the lady have proposed the idea of having a big tracker of all the bills or all the legislation and lawsuits that were being launched against Trump so that the public in general could see, as opposed to news media. I've been out talking to people both who voted for Trump, okay, and who didn't, and nobody trusts the news medias anymore, right? The news outlets. So if they had something that was a little bit more empirical, that they could go in and look and check what's the legislation, what's it against, is there actually something tangible that people could see and search themselves on what's being done, right? And how it's being handled and what the status is as it moves through, right? The process. And I know you talked about doing that and thinking it was a great idea. I've checked your website. I haven't seen anything since then. So that's one of the questions. 2 is, I'd like to ask for your sensitivity that federal workers are not the only people that are losing their jobs with all the DOGE cuts. I work for a contractor, 300 of us were laid off. That company's work ceases to exist here in the US. It was under USAID. It was the first time I'd ever worked for USAID contractor. I'd always done DOD and other civilian agency work. But it impacts lives, and there's a waterfall effect, right? A watershed effect where it impacts, you know, local communities, you know, they can't spend money, you know, groceries, all that stuff, right? So it's a bigger picture, and not to take away from the federal government because they're taking the hit on it, but it's flooding the market with resumes. Employers are getting 500 resumes and cutting off after about 50 to 100. So, you know, it's causing a big problem in trying to get new jobs. So just ask for your sensitivity and consideration in that, because your last town hall on the phone, it was all federal workers, but it's contractor employees and other companies as well they're not hiring. They're kind of like deer in the headlight right now because they don't know what to do. The chaos that Trump is causing is of concern, but my question, and the question I've gotten repetitively from a lot of people, okay, even people that voted for Trump that now regret it, right, is what is the Democratic Party's message? Okay, we talk about repealing, working to repeal. Okay, that's great, and that's important, right? And sure, if we get the House overturned and the Senate overturned at the midterms, and maybe we can impeach Trump in advance and put the Democratic House, in presidential mode, whatever, right? That's 2 years away. I get it. It's pretty hard when you're the underdog to turn things around. So, but you have to be planning. Right now, everybody's blocking, right? Everything he does, they block. And that's what he likes. He likes the chaos. So you have to sit there and go, okay, What's developing as the offense? What's the messaging? What are we going to do? And Schumer, I'm sorry, I just don't see him as an effective leader any longer. So where are we coming forward with new leadership here? And so, we just appear to be floundering, and we're not getting any support, right? So people that were on the fence that didn't really like what was going on with the Democrats and voted for Trump would love to see some clear-cut leadership that they could grasp. There are more people in the center than there are in the far left or the far right. And I think that's what we have to focus on, and not just blocking and tackling what we're doing today, but we got to have that long range vision. So I think that's, oh, and on the SNAP and the Medicaid, I believe I have a friend who read the 1,000 pages. She's retired. And she was saying her observation, and I said I would bring this up, is that with the implementation of the Medicaid and SNAP, it's coming at right after the midterm elections. So the effect
December 31st, 2026.
Right. So the effect is people will be like, they'll still be voting for their regular, constituent, not recognizing or not having yet felt the effects of what those, the big ugly bill has really done. So I think that messaging is really important to get on the offense and get it out there and be part of what the core is, so people really understand what that is. And I have a separate thing on immigration, but I'm going to take it up with your local gentleman, because I think there's some solutioning there. And I've talked to some prior. It's really hard for me to say GOP because I think of goons on pardon. But when I think about them, when I talk to them about my thoughts on the immigration, they said they could get on board with that. And these are Republicans that voted for Trump. So I'm just offer that up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Folks, if we could stand close a little bit closer to the mic, just, so
Yes, let everyone get close to the mic, including me.
All right. Is that good? All right.
Great.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and she had a lot of questions, so I'll answer them while you get set up. I'll start with the tracker. So there's a lawsuit tracker that we have a litigation task force now in Congress, and there's a website and just a cohort of members of Congress supporting all those lawsuits. The bills are pretty well tracked already at congress.gov. There's a lot of different resources to help you track bills. You can always just call our office if you're interested in anything in particular. But at the time, what I wanted to do was track the lawsuits specifically. And out of that town hall came that litigation task force. It wasn't just my idea, other people had heard it too. So, and we've started writing what's called amicus briefs, just briefs in support of the bills. Obviously, we as members of Congress can't be involved directly in the lawsuits, but we can support them. And they've been very effective. Although one of the things Supreme Court recently did was block the ability to do nationwide injunctions, make it harder to stop some of the stuff the Trump administration is doing that's illegal. But nonetheless, thank you for that feedback. And if you have more ideas and what's helpful as far as tracking, we're happy to. We didn't think it was a good use of resources to put trackers for every bill on our website, since Congress.gov already has that, or litigation trackers, but we're open to other things if you guys have more suggestions. The second one, I agree with you on contractors. When I say federal workers, I mean contractors too. A contractor is every bit as much a federal worker. That's why I don't say federal civil servants or federal employees. I say federal workers, because that includes contractors. And then for our region, the impact of the firings and the cuts don't just include the federal civil servants or even the contractors. It includes even people who work for companies that help or serve those contractors and civil servants, restaurants whose patrons are federal workers, federal contractors and civil servants. The effects of this, even nonprofits I've talked to, are very much affected by the cuts on our federal workforce here in Virginia. And when I say federal workers, I absolutely mean contractors too. It's just more clunky to say federal civil servants and contractors, but I appreciate the comment. Dem messaging, I have this conversation with people every day about what Dems should be doing more. And I probably get a different comment every day, but the one thing I do agree with for sure is we can't just be against things, we have to be for things as well. And so I agree with that. I'll be honest, it's harder to get a message out about being for something in this world right now. I've got bills to make do Doge in a better way that doesn't involve all these firings. I've got bills to try to lower costs. I'm on different groups and different task force. I go on cable news. I go on everywhere to try to talk about positive vision and not just an anti-Trump or anti-administration vision. But it's not as juicy a story, right? And so that's why you may not hear it as much, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't continue talking about it every single time we have the opportunity to talk about a positive vision. When I say we, I don't mean just Democrats. I mean everybody. I mean Republicans who are upset. I mean independents who didn't realize this is what they were voting for. And even far left, far right, doesn't matter. There's something to hate in the last couple of months for everyone. And so for people who care, they should speak up. They should talk about a positive vision. And then leadership, yes, I've heard a lot about that. I've heard a lot about Schumer. I'll say that I don't think we should wait for leadership and wait for a white knight to come fix everything, or that leadership comes from everyone. And so if you're looking for a leader, just start by being the leader yourself. And I've tried to do that. Sometimes it's hard. One of the things that makes it hard in Congress is that we have 400 plus members of Congress, 200 plus Democrats, and we each have different districts. And so I'll get a message from leadership on something, and I'll feel like that's not very Virginia friendly, what you just said, for instance. And so I'll not agree with that message. So that's why sometimes you'll hear a different message, is because we have different regions. I'm always going to be, supportive of Virginia. But I look at the messaging part and I agree with a lot of what you said. So you kind of answered your question in a lot of ways. So thanks for the suggestions. And then yes, a lot of the provisions were delayed in this bill. They were delayed even more in the House bill because they didn't want people to feel the effects of it until they were gone. It was sort of like they come and do this thing and then they kind of sneak away. The deadline, the implementation dates got pushed forward. At first, it was going to be after Trump left office in the House bill, and a lot of them got pushed forward to after the midterms. But regardless, that's why I think it's important. I see it as my job to explain to people what's going to happen so that when it happens, you'll know why, right? And if you like doing a lot of paperwork for your Medicaid benefits, then okay. And if you don't, then you know why at least now. And I don't want people to get away with lies, especially lies like, this is only kicking out illegal immigrants, because that's simply not true. Or this is only kicking out able-bodied people who are stealing from the system, because that's simply not true either. And so that's part of why I'm going to continue to talk about this bill and what's in it, and talk about the facts, because that is really important and critical. Thank you for the questions. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Ariel Turley. I'm coming from Manassas. And I'm here today because of a matter that needs to be addressed urgently, and that is the matter of ICE. 2 days ago, ICE agents went to the Puerto Rican Museum in Chicago and unlawfully commandeered the museum and their parking lot as a show of force against immigrants. As a proud Puerto Riqueño, I am extremely angry at these actions, and I'm sick and tired of seeing this poor excuse for law enforcement trample all over the Bill of Rights of every American. And I can say that as someone who served as a military police officer in the U.S. Army. I know you guys came under a fire a few years ago over the whole defund the police stuff, but I think it's safe to say that the American people don't want to live in a police state where you can be denaturalized for not towing the party line and then deported to some country you've never set foot in. Thanks to the big beautiful bill, the ICE budget is now larger than the entire Israeli military. Needless to say, I think you and the rest of the Democrats need to take a stand and call for the defunding of ICE. That is to say, keep funding That is to say, to keep funding Customs and Border Patrol, but let local and state law enforcement handle immigrants in their community. Lastly, when Democrats get a supermajority because of these actions that they've taken, what will your big, beautiful bill look like? And lastly, Epstein didn't kill himself.
Yeah, on ICE, again, I don't even know how they're going to, I think they had a recruiting event at the Dallas Expo Center recently. I don't even know how they're going to spend all this money so quickly, but they're going to quickly become their own military. What really concerns me is the way in which they're approaching people and how they're implementing the agenda. They're putting on masks. They have no badges. And they're going up to people and they're simply taking them. You're from Manassas, is that right? So a few days ago, they actually went to the Manassas courthouse and they were waiting for people who were having issues with their visa or who may be undocumented and to come out of the courthouse to detain them. And now it's leading to a situation where folks who have visa issues or who have refugee status don't want to go to their court appearances anymore because then ICE is just going to be waiting for them. The same thing happened in Loudoun County too. And so again, if you wanted to solve immigration, how about getting some more immigration judges? How about getting some more resources to CBP? We had a very bipartisan bill last year that would have addressed a lot of the issues when it came to immigration enforcement. And unfortunately, it was Trump who actually said, let's not do it that way because I've got this other way of doing it that involves this kind of new military wing of our government. And so, that's really tragic. When it comes to, what's my one big, beautiful bill going to look like? It's the opposite of this in a lot of ways. So it would mean expanding healthcare to cover more people, if not everyone. It means expanding investments in renewable technologies. It means getting the best and brightest people to join our government so we can make government services better and more efficient. And it's basically the opposite of a lot of what's going on here. It'd be doing things to lower the debt and deficit, but by making strategic investments that have a good return on investment. For instance, investments in science and technology and innovation and research. We have a lot of research facilities in Manassas. Those have great ROIs. We're talking about 10 to 1 return on your investment. Those are the first things that have been cut. NIH has been cut, NSF has been cut, lab funding has been cut. Those things have been cut too. And so, yeah, I'd go the opposite direction of what we just saw. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Ajit from Chantley. So last month I have seen that you have like 15 initiatives coming up and you're working on those 15 initiatives, which include like road developments, water management, house crisis, and etc. Right? So I just want to hear more about it and your strategy for it, and how can community help you in getting success in those 15 initiatives.
I think you're talking about my budget requests. Yes. I've never had a question about my budget requests before in the town hall, so thank you for. These are basically local projects, community funding, community project funding that we can request from the Appropriations Committee. And so the idea was to take the highest priority things that are being developed in our community, whether it's wastewater treatment or it's affordable housing. Like there's an affordable housing project here, and workforce housing, as I call it, here in South Riding, and just try to see if we can get some federal funding for it. We've been pretty successful so far. Republicans have a rule in the House that they get 70% of the funding for their districts, and we get 30%. And then they also get to pass 70% of the bills that are passed. 70% must be Republican bills. Only 30% can be Democratic bills. And so we're facing an uphill battle right now to try to get all of our projects funded. But we're going to continue to try. It's going to be even more difficult now because of all these cuts and all these firings and all these attacks on Virginia's workforce, federal and local workforce. But I think so far so good on those specific projects.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chris Stevenson. I'm a Loudoun County resident. I've been here since 2002, and I grew up in Fairfax County. My wife and I and our 7 children have benefited from living here. We appreciate you having this town hall. I've been to 2. My analysis of the big, beautiful bill is that it is very un-American. And my story, I guess, and then I have an analysis and a solution. My story is that you mentioned the best and the brightest in your bill. So the cuts to the federal government workforce have definitely impacted our family. We have 2 of the best and brightest. I'm biased, but 2 of our older children are looking to work for the federal government. One in Department of Agriculture, Wilderness and Wildlands Conservation, and the other in the State Department. And for them, their landscape of employment has been devastated. And so that has burdened them and our family quite a bit. And of course, we're very upset. Here's my analysis of what's going on. The election of the president has blessed the following characteristics as the recipe for success in the United States of America. 1, persistent dishonesty, in particular about the 2020 election. 2, contempt for the Constitution, which he pledged to preserve, protect, and defend. He attempted to stay in power after losing a free and fair election by overthrowing the Constitution's electoral clauses. 3, the dishonest rewriting of history, in particular January 6, 2021, from an insurrection, which he incited and observed, into a patriotic event. 4, lawlessness. For example, pardons for those convicted of crimes on January 6th, or the disappearing of people off American streets without due process. 5, public ridicule and shaming. 6, sexual predation, of which he was convicted. And 7, felony. He is a convicted felon. This is an absolute catastrophe. And importantly, he has now compromised the education and future of our children and our grandchildren. So here's one of the solutions that I'm going to ask your help on. I ask you to join me and a group of like-minded parents here, starting in Loudoun County, in calling on the president to issue a formal apology to America, and especially to our children and grandchildren, for these political sins. Put him in a corner. To tell our children and grandchildren that he is sorry and that these things he has done are not to be emulated, but eschewed. And we persist at this until he does.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I don't think this is a president that apologizes, unfortunately, but we can always ask, right? We can always ask. Put him in a corner, yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I was thinking about a lot of the things I wanted to say while I was in line here, and then one of the gentlemen ahead of me put it so much more eloquently than I could, so I guess I'm just going to try to follow up on him. I've been watching what ICE has been doing in this district and in my county, Loudoun County, for the past few weeks and months, and it's getting very alarming to me. We've seen that the bill has introduced a, what was it, $150 billion budget for them, which is terrifying and far exceeds what any law enforcement should ever need. And they are essentially going around and rounding people up off the streets. It was mentioned that they are that they've got people during their court hearings in Manassas. That is not a one-time thing. They are doing that constantly all over the place. They are taking people, they are putting them in their vans and taking them off to God knows where. They are giving them armbands and tracking ankle bracelets, which is also very scary, and taking them to, I'm sure all of you have heard, Alligator Alcatraz. I think it's a little better to call it Alligator Auschwitz, considering it is, by definition, a concentration camp. And what concerns me far greater than that is that the Loudoun County Sheriff's Department is not only fully collaborating with, but cooperating with ICE. They are following them around. They are doing what they are doing. And people are disappearing. People are being ripped from their families. I really just want to know, do you have a plan for how to address this crisis we are facing?
So, I mean, I go back to Kilmar Abrego, the guy that was sent to El Salvador, right, without having a hearing. And we put a lot of pressure on the administration.
I believe he still hasn't been released.
Right, but he's back from El Salvador at least, right? Yeah, they're going to try to send him back, right? But I think my point is that we have to talk about it and keep talking about it, not stop talking about it, not let it go, right? And we have to talk about situations like there was another one in Manassas where a gentleman was apprehended and detained for being undocumented. Well, he was an American citizen and a Trump voter, right? We have lots of stories of people who are detained without any sort of ability to prove their citizenship or prove their documentation.
That doesn't quite matter anymore, because now we've seen that the Supreme Court has allowed Trump's decision to strike down other judges basically allow birthright citizenship to end.
Not quite, but I understand the frustration.
It's making
yeah.
it easier to facilitate it in a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think the way to make immediate change is by not just having one side of the aisle complain. It should be having all Americans standing up, or all Americans who are willing to stand up and talk about it, complain. I was surprised to hear Joe Rogan, for instance, complaining about it the other day, right? Like if they just hear from me, for instance, about how terrible some of the stuff that's happening is, they don't care as much. But when it starts being every American, when it starts being people they didn't expect to talk about it too, then that's important as well. And so I'm trying to get out the message of what's going on. And I appreciate you speaking out as well and being here today. But I think that's part of how we fight this. If we don't have the votes, we have the voice at least.
Well, that's all well and good, but I think we need to stop talking about it and start doing something about it.
Good evening, and thank you both to our wonderful congressman and the panel for taking the time out of their lovely evenings to be here. So I really do appreciate it. You all said we have a story to tell, so I'm here to start with mine. My name is Jordan Loy. I'm 17 years old. I live in Ashburn, Virginia, and I have type 1 diabetes. Last evening, I returned from the wonderful chance I had to advocate at Capitol Hill with our Virginia senators and your office to advocate for the renewal of the special diabetes program. So for those of you that don't know, type 1 diabetes is something that affects your pancreas and where your body is unable to produce insulin. Type 1 diabetes is the third leading autoimmune disease across our country and affects millions of people. With the renewal of the SDP program, a big issue is the lack of funding cuts, as I'm sure you all know. Now, within the last couple of years, the SDP has lost over $30 million of funding. This funding has made it so people such as me don't have to rely on insulin shots anymore and have had the technological improvements to use something as a continuous glucose monitor or an insulin pump to make us being able to treat our condition much more manageably. Now, the SDP is working very hard for a cure, and this is something crucial that needs to be passed for our community. I am here on behalf of so many children, so many adults, so many people across this country who need this bill to be renewed. This is a bipartisan effort, and I know senators and congresspeople on both sides who are willing to support this bill. So all I ask, if not for a moment of your time, is that you help us, the type 1 diabetes community, in renewing the SDP plan, please.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Congressman, panel members again. Thank you all very much for being here. My name is Richard Rivera. I am a 24-year Navy veteran. The last 22 years after my retirement in 2003, I have had the honor of supporting a major weather satellite program. So as you guys watch your weather person at night say, hey, let's look at the weather, you're welcome. So I say that in a joking manner, but I have to also tell you, first I have a question and then I have a story quickly. The question is this: I understand from my civics classes from many, many years ago, the big beautiful bill is an authorization bill. Is that correct? Oh, it is a full-blown appropriation bill. Okay. All right. Well, so it's a done deal. It's not something that in the appropriations, you all with the 12 appropriation subcommittees have the opportunity to be able to reverse any of this then. So that's the bottom line question. Is there an opportunity to reverse it?
We can. They did it through reconciliation. We can reverse it through reconciliation. Is that right? Yeah.
Okay, so that was my question. That gives a little bit of hope. So that's good. I'm glad. Thank you very much for that. Now the quick story. There are four of us. This big beautiful bill is a direct attack on every member of my family. My youngest daughter, my beautiful 31-year-old Rebecca, is a severely autistic nonverbal young lady. She also has a Medicaid waiver. Okay, so consequently, this is a direct threat to her. My oldest daughter worked as a contractor at the U.S. State Department doing aid work for countries other than Israel and Egypt. And early in February, she was told on a Friday to clear her desk out on Monday, that her contract had been terminated. Luckily, her company, it took over a month, but her company found her a job as she was running out of leave without pay and was on the verge of being fired. She has another job now, so God bless it. It's worked out all right for her. That's great. This beautiful lady that was sitting next to me right now, my lovely bride, Debbie, has been a 34-year civil servant. 39, sorry, sweetie. Okay. 39-year civil servant and
I missed 5 years
there you go. Sorry. She was forced into retirement by Doge and everything that was going on with that right now. And we're still waiting for any of the pay that she's waiting for her retirement because of the cuts that were done to the organizations that handle, the processing of these fine people, these proud public servants that have done their job. Again, I reject the premise of anyone who says that these people are lazy, who don't do their job, who are on the public dole. They are liars. They are liars. Shame on them. Shame on all of them for what they've done. And these people are proud people who are mission focused. Okay. So your help in that regard to try and get those folks to be able to do their jobs. And I know they're swamped. There were over 1,200 people in her organization that took retirement when she did. There are 3, just in NOAA, at NOAA. Okay. Yeah. The folks who the weather service is part of, who did a great job this weekend and always do a great job, more dedicated public servants. Okay. There are only 3 of them left after the cuts to be able to handle 1,200 people retiring. So we're going to be waiting a while for her to be able to start getting paid for what she has done, accomplished over a lifetime. Okay. This isn't right. Anything you can do to help that is fine. And finally, this week, I got the word after 22 years as a proud member of that same weather organization, that same thing, a NASA contractor. NASA has taken such significant hits that the task that I'm on as a contractor is terminated as of 1 October. So I'm out of a job. So I am one of those people you talked about. Now, luckily, I never voted for the man. I'm a lifelong Republican, but a never Trumper, and I'm proud of that. So thanks. Appreciate that. But the point I'm making is I've given you 4 examples here that are precious to me. I know everybody in this room has something that has touched them, something that reaches out and touches your heart. Congressman, again, I'm a lifelong Republican, but I voted for you. So I'm asking you, as the man I hired, to look out for me. If there's something you could do with the appropriations process to reverse as much of this as you can. Okay. The program that I'm on, this weather program I told you about, took a 40% hit. 40%. That's why all of us are having to go away. Okay. NASA and NOAA funding needs to be restored. It needs to be fixed. Science is real. Science isn't made up. Okay. You can take a Sharpie. You can take a Sharpie all you want and say, this is the direction that this storm is going to go. Okay. But that satellite that I helped put in orbit was off when it came to that storm that he was predicting. He was off by a couple hundred miles. The satellite that we produced 5 days in advance predicted the location of where the storm was coming ashore within 1.3 miles. 1.3 miles. We are damn good at what we do. And we've taken a hit now that is catastrophic to the follow-on program. So anything you can do to help GeoXO is important. So I thank you for your time. I thank your panel. And thanks for the info about the appropriations. I wasn't sure how that was going to work out. Thank you very much. And thank you all very much for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all you do. And yeah, the cuts in NOAA, the cuts to the Weather Service have been a priority of ours. We've written many letters. We've put a lot of pressure on them. I've done many speeches on the floor. I've even, it's not just talking, we've been trying to back channel with different Republicans who might be sympathetic. We're going to continue to work on that because that's very critical. We just had a flood this past week. Everyone's talking about all the early warning signs and what we're supposed to do moving forward. Well, how about funding the Weather Service? That'd be a good place to start.
The next program, because it's taking the hits of this, we're not as good as the one that's up there now.
Yeah, and the thing I've tried to talk about when it comes to the cuts to our federal workers, contractors, civil servants, nonprofits here in Virginia is that firing people here who are experts in their field, you're firing the work too. And that's going to hurt every single American as well. And so that's why we need to continue to stand up and fund those programs and people. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for coming here today. I'm 22. I'm Zach Mattia. I'm from Ashburn. And like so many others in this room, I wanted to talk about the $178 billion increase to ICE and immigrant detention funding. And I believe this is a major issue that we need to focus on. Over the past months, since the Trump administration has come into power, we have seen many get unlawfully detained and deported, both with green cards and without them. And the unlawful detentions of these people is spreading more and more. We have seen that the envelope has been pushed with Abrego Garcia and the gentleman from Colombia, who's I'm drawing a blank on, Mahmoud Khalil, for in his case, speaking out against Israel. And we can see anyone who is a student of history or can simply look at other oppressive regimes in the modern society where this is heading. I don't think anyone here likes that. I was happy to vote for you in my first election this time last November, but I was disappointed to see that you voted in favor of Laken Riley and a different act that said that we are sanctioning the ICE International Criminal Court for their ruling or their case against the Netanyahu government in Israel. I wanted to ask, why have you voted in favor of the Trump administration and against the vast majority of your Democratic colleagues for Laken Riley and for the act discount or sanctioning the ICC? And will you be taking actions like this in the future? Thank you.
The second, you're talking about the ICC or you're talking about ICE? Which
the international.
The ICC. The ICC, that was about the fact that their cases are not being evenly distributed. They're not prosecuting all the cases that they should be. They're picking and choosing the cases. So I have a problem.
Netanyahu. So I think that us only sanctioning them after launching one against Netanyahu is pretty damning.
I think the problem with the ICE, my concern with the ICC is that, they didn't go after other dictators too. They didn't go after other human rights abuses as well. They kind of picked and choose. Some of their funding sources, I think, has compromised them in different ways. And so I had a problem with the way that court is picking its cases right now. And I wanted to see changes in that. And so even now, we've seen changes since that vote. And so I want to continue to see changes. It wasn't specific to Middle East politics. What was the other one? Laken Riley. Laken Riley is a little different than what we're talking about today, in that all Laken Riley was saying, if you're arrested or charged with a crime, that we can look into the process of detaining and deporting you. It doesn't mean you're going to be deported. All it says is that if you commit a crime, that you're going to that we're going to actually assess whether or not you should stay in this country. I think that's the concern I have of what's going on, though, is the fact that we're not even giving people that chance to prove their status in this country or anything else. We're not giving people that opportunity. And so I think Laken Riley is different from what you're seeing here. And so that's why that was different from what I'm saying now. That makes sense.
I could be slightly misinterpreting it, but I read that it forced us to local law enforcement to turn over cases with suspected illegal aliens to the department, to the federal government and ICE for deportation.
If they're arrested, yeah. If they commit a crime or arrested for a crime.
I just fear that you voting against that and voting against the majority of your Democratic colleagues undermines your criticism of the Trump administration, given that you're co-signing their immigration bills.
Okay, yeah, we'll agree to disagree on that, but thank you for your comments. Appreciate it.
Good evening, Congressman. Thank you for your time this afternoon and panel as well, for hearing our concerns. My name is Kyle. I'm from Sterling. I wanted to circle back to your comments on messaging earlier within the party. From what I heard is that we shouldn't be waiting on party leadership. What I heard is that there's a lot of things that are hard. Respectfully, that's what we're asking of you. Losing your job is hard. Losing healthcare coverage is hard. We've got a party right now that's trying to take away our voice. Completely understand that we have a job to do here, and a lot of us are here doing that job, speaking our voice. But we need more. We need leadership. We need more from you. Lead us and we will follow you, but we need more from the party.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. That's the opposite of what I said. I said we should not wait for party leadership. We should all be leaders ourselves, including me, right? So I'm not going to wait for, Hakeem Jeffries is the head of our caucus. He did what he could, did an 8-hour speech, right? He did it his way. My way was to try to back channel and prevent a lot of bad stuff. I got a lot of bad stuff out of the bill through some back channeling, through some public pressure, right? We have to do everything we can, but if we shouldn't wait for leadership, we should start leading now. We should start doing everything we can now. That's why last week I was pulling all-nighters. That's why the past 2 months we've thrown the kitchen sink at it. But I'm open to suggestions if you have any particular things you'd like me to do.
Ask that leadership to get out of the way. If they're not willing to fight for us, get out of the way.
Yeah. What I do is I just kind of try to do it. I try to push my message forward. I try to do it in creative ways. I've done everything from MSNBC interviews. I'll be there at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning if anyone wants to catch me, or TikTok videos. I try to do those as well. All of the above. I've tried everything. I'm going to continue that, but I think it's really important. You guys have a voice too. Let's be on the same team as far as if you agree with some of the stuff I'm saying and you want that to get out. What I said was hard, and I could use a lot of help actually, is it's easy to actually get out a message complaining about the administration. It's even easier to get out a message where Democrats are fighting, right? We're talking about a couple of bills where that happened. That's the easiest thing to get out. It's really hard to get out a positive message about what we want to do positively for the community. It's hard to get out a positive message about anything, really good things that are happening in the community. It's also hard to talk about how what's going on in DC will impact. We talk about 300,000 people getting, children losing their food benefits, but what does that mean? I want to hear from some of the children or their parents, right? What does that mean to them? How is that going to impact them? How is that affecting their daily life, right? So that's why it helps me help the community when we can all collaborate and work together. So thank you.
Yeah, that's not to say we don't believe in what you're doing, and I really appreciate what you're doing here. But whatever you can do to get that message and how can we help you send out that message, whatever it is, there just needs to be more.
Yeah.
So respectfully,
Let's
whatever you
come
can
find
do,
me
thank
afterwards.
you.
Let's work together. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, folks, for all your great questions. Just so we can get through everyone, please limit your questions to 1 minute and 15 seconds. Thank you. We want to make sure everyone gets their chance to speak.
I just got a 15-minute warning. We'll go as long as we can, and a lot of other ominous index cards. So I'll read through them during this next comment.
I'll try to go fast then. Mike Hudak from Round Hill. As of 5 o'clock, I was an IRS employee. Tomorrow morning, who knows? Tomorrow afternoon, who knows? I know that they want to cut 60% of the IT operation, which I'm in. It goes from 10,000 down to 4,000. We're trying to modernize the IT operations. They've already canceled out tens of millions of dollars worth of the direct file application and program that we put in, and they want to do even more to ruin the IT operation at IRS. But I guess if I lose my job, ICE is hiring, and I can go and kidnap some moms and dads in front of their children. I do want to reach out to our law enforcement and say, I'm really sorry because you're getting dragged into this ICE and having to be with them, because we all liked you, and now I don't know what's going to happen with your reputation, and it's a sad day. But as far as the message, there's just no passion to stop this Trump train, from what I understand. And you asked, what can we do? Take leadership. I've been trying to do that, calling up Republicans in their offices and trying to just express my disgrace as to the Medicaid cuts that are going to be impacting their states and everything else like FEMA. I've been trying to get in touch with everybody from a Republican senator or House and just act like I'm in their district and I'm a Republican who has voted for them. And so you had mentioned the Republicans want to take the agencies, some of the agencies out of DC. Susan Collins said today about the FBI. And last week we all woke up that the FBI was going to the Reagan building, and we were like, where the heck did that come from? And Susan Collins today said, where's the analysis? So whenever you get this, we want to take whatever agency out of DC, just bring up where's the analysis. And because
I have a bill with Senator Chris Van Hollen to do just that, actually. So we have an analysis of any agency before they move, because they tried to move a couple agencies in the first Trump administration to Kansas City at the USDA, and it was a complete disaster. They lost 80% of the workforce, couldn't hire the people back. It was a disaster for those offices and for their work. We're running low on time, so if we could get to your final question, that'd be great.
One last final question then. What do you think Trump would do if Biden accepted a $400 million airplane?
He would criticize it a lot and then do it himself. Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here tonight. Mike Smith, Manassas Park resident. I am also like some of the previous commenters, I'm also a federal government contractor. And I work for a company that writes software that is used by FEMA, USAID, a lot of different government agencies. And when people see, as you've already mentioned, there's so many federal employees being fired, and it's all rolling downhill. It's rolling to us as the contractors. My company has lost 50% of our workforce, and then the people that say, well, the feds, they can just get a job in the private sector, but they can't because they're not hiring, and everybody's being laid off. A lot of my favorite coworkers, it's like I'm the IT guy. My role used to be to ship equipment around the country and around the world in support of disaster response efforts. And now all I do is take equipment to FEMA headquarters from people who've been riffed. And it makes me angry. And I see everything that they're doing is either stealing our space shuttle, they're rolling back our climate change initiatives. I follow the EPA on social media, and all they post is propaganda and BS, and it makes me angry. So I come to your town halls. I hope I vote the right way. But what else can we do? And my question for you is, how do you stay positive? Because I just feel angry all the time. So any tips? Thank you.
Thank you for your story, because that's very helpful. We should talk more afterwards. But yeah, a couple of things is, one, I've seen positive things happen by fighting, and I try to talk about them as much as I can to the extent I can, and just let people know that most of my wins have been because of people in the community. Some of my best legislative ideas so far have been because of people in the community. And if we continue to speak up, if we continue to do things, to everything we can, there will be positive results. But if we sit back and just complain, that's okay if you complain in a way that maybe leads to action, or you at least make your story public. But we can't get too down, I think. And I try to meditate every day. I try to do breathing exercises when I get worked up. But I also, if I wasn't doing this, I'd be at home yelling at the TV just like you guys. And so, I feel privileged to have this opportunity to do it. So, but I appreciate you being here today. Thank you.
We appreciate you doing it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Katie Ellis. I'm from Ashburn, and my question is about healthcare. We've heard so much about all the people who are going to lose their healthcare because of cuts to Medicaid. I do not rely on Medicaid. I'm fortunate. I have pretty decent benefits through my employer. I cover my kids through my employer. 3 of my kids have type 1 diabetes, which, as Jordan already shared, requires consistent, continuous insulin, constant blood glucose monitoring. It is outrageously expensive. So my question is, it's a 2-part question. First part of my question is, should I be worried about the already high cost of my kids' care increasing even more? And then secondly, there have been such huge strides in the treatment of this disease, and we're seeing real progress towards a cure due to fully funded agencies and investment in research and programs at the federal level, like the Special Diabetes Program. So I guess the second part of my question is whether or not the passage of this budget is going to put a halt to life-saving research, not only for type 1 diabetes, but for so many other diseases that also have cures on the horizon. Thank you.
Some of that was already happening before this bill, unfortunately, and there's continued. We actually, a couple of days ago, had a science fair of science that got cut over the past couple of months, and it was very sad because it was actually very important projects that did life-saving work. And so we're continuing to try to prevent some of these cuts, but it's very difficult because if you cut funding from a lab for 1 month, it sets us back many, many months, sometimes years. Sometimes researchers don't want to do. I talked to one young woman who's a postdoc, and she doesn't know if she wants to go into research anymore. She might go into a different field altogether because where is she going to find funding to do her work? And so it's having an impact, a brain drain in our country, in our government, and it's going to lead to a lot of things that we don't know we would have missed out on, a lot of cancers that would have been cured that we'll never know about. And so it's one of the tragedies of this past 6 months that doesn't get talked about as much, but it's just as important as everything else we talked about today. Thank you. Also, you mentioned you're not on Medicaid. I'm glad you won't be affected by this, but bad news, even if you're not on Medicaid, your premiums are still going to go up because it cuts to Medicaid. And so, your hospital wait times will be higher. They had a $50 billion fund to save rural hospitals. I don't think $50 billion was enough to save some rural hospitals. They were already going under. And so now we're going to, not all of Loudoun County is rural either. I mean, qualifies for that fund. And so a lot of the hospitals in our region will be affected by this too. I talked to one nurse who said she thinks out of Nova and Lansdowne, she thinks about 20% or so of the people that come in and out are on Medicaid, for instance. That's a huge hit to our hospitals. But I appreciate you being here today. Thank you. Let's try to keep our questions really short so we can get everyone in line.
Hi, my name's Tatiana. I'm a nurse. I've worked in hospitals. I've worked in home health, visiting people at home. These people who lose their insurance, Miss April commented about the population she serves. The need does not go away if the funding does. That's what's going to happen. These people are still going to be sick. Chronic diseases like diabetes, cancer's not going to stop. Heart attacks aren't going to stop. Trauma injuries from car accidents or from victims of violence aren't going to stop. Currently, we have a law called EMTALA that's been in effect for about 40 years that says if you show up at the emergency room, you must be medically screened and you must be stabilized. Doesn't matter if you're a citizen, doesn't matter if you're here legally, doesn't matter if you're insured, doesn't matter if you can pay. I feel like this country is going down a road where things like that will go away and people's choice will be to sit at home and die or to go to the hospital and be told to leave. And I'm very frightened of that.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
I would like to thank you for coming out and listening to our concerns tonight. I am Jacinta Molina. I am 14 years old and I'm from Ashburn. And as I enter high school, this topic becomes very, very relevant to my age group. While what I'm concerned with is not something that was previously mentioned, it is still extremely relevant, not only to us, but to the future generation of America. This big, beautiful bill disadvantages financially vulnerable students from being able to fund higher education. If you all don't know, this bill is putting stricter limits on those eligible for Pell Grants and is placing caps on student loans. This makes it extremely difficult for students who may not have as much capability to fund their education. Higher education should be an available outcome for all people, regardless of income. This makes me not only fear for my own ability to pursue education, but also the future of America with a generation that was not able to achieve a quality education. So my question is, how do you plan on assisting students affected by this bill? There are several private organizations that provide scholarships to underprivileged students that you are available to work with.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, this bill makes it harder to get student loans. It taxes a lot of universities. There's a lot of bad stuff when it comes to education on this bill. And I look forward to working with you on seeing what we can do. I think college should be affordable for everyone and obtainable for everyone. I think community college is a great, best deal in town these days and should be free. And I'm going to continue to support that initiative. And I think long term, we have to look at two things. One, how can we make college attainable for everyone and higher education attainable for everyone? And two, how can we make sure that people have an opportunity to get trained early on for the jobs of the future? Because technology is coming, it's here, and it's some of the things that we're taught are becoming more and more relevant. And so young people like you have a really big opportunity to be leaders, not just in the country, but in the world when it comes to the jobs of the future. And so we're going to do all of that. And I look forward to seeing you in Congress. I was very impressed by your remarks. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you all for being here and talking with us. My name's Kent. I'm a water quality researcher for the area based out of Manassas. You've talked already a lot about how, and some of other people too, about how cuts to federal funding for research have been exacerbated or codified by this bill. With your committee work, do you see any appetite for softening or fixing any of that? The bipartisan, ideally.
Yeah, I do see a little bit of appetite, but not enough. I think we need to dispel with the notion that these cuts and firings are about waste, fraud, and abuse. They're absolutely not. They're about political revenge in some cases. In other cases, they're about attacking certain ideologies, like DEI, for instance. And when we say DEI, we don't just mean people of color. We mean people who are disabled. We mean veterans. We mean making sure that our workforce in the federal government reflects our country, right? And so we're seeing that this is being easily spun into something, explained as something that is finally making our government lean and more efficient and getting rid of all the waste and fraud. But the more we can dispel that notion and fight that message, I think the more appetite we'll see. We have to shift public opinion on that, and we're starting to. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Barbara Davis. I live very locally. I'm actually Kirkpatrick Farms right down the street. I'm the wife of a veteran. My son is in the Army, and I have a younger son who has an IEP. So a couple of questions for you. Number one is, I don't know if this lovely cash grab for Trump and his crony billionaires affects the basically veterans health care and basically veterans benefits, as well as the Department of Education, which is the one that funds special education programs in schools and in local schools. I think the last couple of years has given us a very, very big lesson, all of us, a big lesson in civics. I'm a naturalized citizen. We all had to take a civics test, right? I think everybody got that lesson. But my question is with regards to messaging. For example, I had no idea that the House, basically the 70-30 rule you talked about earlier, that is something that most citizens need to know about, whether that's just a Republican rule or whether that is is there in place all the time. I think that is something that people need to know about. So those are my questions. I guess my questions for the panel are with regards to the economic effects for veterans and the education and the messaging.
I'm happy to answer that, but I want to give our panelists a shot if anyone wants to.
Just one comment related to your question, because this is an area with a really high percentage of veterans, and Virginia in general has a higher percentage than most of the country. 1 in 10 veterans use Medicaid. So even if the bill doesn't impact the service-related benefits, 10% age 1964 have Medicaid as their health insurance.
Yeah, and there's veterans on SNAP too. And my sister works at a VA hospital, and she's already seeing the impact, not just of the cuts, but of previous cuts as well on the VA. VA hospitals are going to be affected just as much as other hospital systems too. So yeah, it's going to really hurt for a lot of veterans. Not to mention all the veterans getting fired in our region, for instance, which is another issue.
So one last thing. Sorry, I meant to say this earlier. We went back to Ireland a few weeks ago, and I asked my neighbor who worked for ICE, am I being overly paranoid in taking my naturalization certificate with me on the plane, even though I have an American passport? He looked at me, he was like, no, you're not being paranoid. And part of me feels insulated. I'm going to say the quiet part out loud. I'm not their focus because of how I look. And there's something deeply wrong with that. So my last point.
Thank you.
Congressman, we are speaking on behalf of immigrant teenager students from our local community who are afraid to speak up.
Congressman, as an immigrant who came to the United States in 2019 from Honduras following a legal path to citizenship when I'm 18, because even though I'm young, I have already decided in my future, being a politician to work for the people of Virginia. How can you ensure that I won't be ripped away from my high school friends, from my high school and friends, as well as feeling safe going to school and coming back to seeing my mother, who is also following her path to citizenship?
Thank you so much for being here, first of all. Thank you. We're working a lot with state and local government officials as well to try to make sure we can protect people as best we can. In the end, the whole community has to speak up against it. And so I know a lot of people here have your back, and we'll continue to speak up and fight. So thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Andy. This might be wildly off topic, but what are your opinions on the nomination of Zohran Mamdani for the mayorship of New York City and how it relates to the Democratic Party nationwide? Because to me, I don't really know much about politics. From my perspective, the Democratic establishment seems more interested in like stopping progressives from doing anything than stopping Trump from doing like everything.
Yeah, I think the Andrew Cuomo was the other guy running, right? I think there was one more. And look at what Andrew Cuomo's rap sheet is, right? And that was the person that I think a lot of the local elected officials in New York were supporting. And then you had Eric Adams as well. And so you had those two folks. You had someone who was openly corrupt and someone who had a really poor track record and behavioral track record. And then you had someone who was new, who was young, who had positive ideas for what to do. And I think someone said it earlier best, that we can't just be the party of being against people, and we can't just be the party of, oh, I've heard of that guy. Wasn't he an elected official before? So let's all get on board with him. We have to be the party of new ideas, of bold ideas, of getting our message out in a positive way. And I think he did that really well. And so I think we have to continue to learn from what people, what voters want. And I think that's one takeaway that I saw from that. So I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Sir, my name is Ram. Yes, I wanted to congratulate that you are like working very hard and got the bill.
Oh, this is a softball, guys. I know this guy. He has roses for me. So this is a great way to end, though.
So I had to come from here or from there.
Well, you can give them to me afterwards. But thank you so much for being here. And thank you. Thank you so much. I'm embarrassed now.
Yes,
We had one more question.
yes, I
Thank you
have
so
a
much.
comment. Am a landlord, and I got a phone call from the daughter of the lady who was renting. She said that they were being deported. This woman was my tenant for 10 years, and all that woman did was clean other people's houses. And yet she and her two teenage girls were sent back to El Salvador. Terrible, inhumane, cruel. Trump is cruel. Everything he does is cruel.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, last word on immigration. What's happening is not an immigration policy that's sustainable. We should do comprehensive immigration reform that's getting people like her a path to citizenship so they can be able to pay taxes, be a part of the country. And what's happening instead is not something that you can spend all the billions of dollars you want, but it's going to be a real problem trying to do mass deportations like they're trying to do. So that's why I'm against a lot of these tactics and what's going on. So I want to thank everyone again. If you were online, we'll try to follow up. If you have questions and you weren't able to get them in, please let me know. But thank you so much for being here today. If you're one of the people who said, how can I help or what do I do? Come find me afterwards or come find my team afterwards. We have plenty of things for you to do. But most of all, keep showing up and keep speaking out. So thank you again for coming. Thank you all so much.